Hi everybody, this is Traci Chen and welcome back to my channel, My Great Australian Dream. I'm the Principal Lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. Now today we're going to talk about the 491 visa in New South Wales. Now, as we all know, it just opened up and there is some major changes and I've had some time to have a deep look into it. But I know there's some big changes. So before we jump into it, I just want to say it is the end of the financial year. So these changes and it makes it seem like it's a lot harder. It is kind of understandable, but I'm sure in the financial year, things will change. So don't lose hope. However, in saying that, if you do meet the requirements, there's no harm in applying. You got to be in it to win it. And also, I hope you find this video really helpful today. Don't forget to share this with people who need it and also like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any changes in Australian migration. So as you know, the 491 visa allows you to live and work in regional Australia. It is a temporary visa and granted for a 5-year period. And technically after 3 years, if you meet the next set of requirements, you're eligible to apply for your permanent residency. Now with that part, the 191, I'll do a separate video on that and how you can qualify, but there's no point system, English test and all that for the 191. So the 491 isn't that bad. Now before you dive into this and try to make an application, make sure you have two main things. One is obviously an English test. The minimum would be competent English, which is 6 in each band, and also a valid skills assessment for your occupation. So for example, if you're a mechanical engineer, you'll need a skills assessment with Engineers Australia. If you're an ICT business analyst, you'll need a skills assessment with the Australian Computer Society. I have previously done a video on this, so I'll drop the link below. So if you want some more information on that, go check out that video. But today is about the 491 visa, the New South Wales application process, and the different streams that are available. So first of all, let's talk about stream 1. So obviously to be eligible for this stream, firstly, you must have a valid skills assessment on the combined occupation list for stream 1. That one there. Now what we mean by the valid skills assessment is obviously the right skills assessing body has provided the valid skills assessment. It is the full skills assessment. I've actually seen some people submit to us a provisional skills assessment, or one you use for the 485 visa. That's not the one. You need the full skills assessment, and obviously you need to check that it hasn't actually expired, which is super important. Sometimes people do submit skills assessment for us and we check and we're like, oh, it's actually expired. This was actually from 3 years ago or 2 years ago. Every skills assessment body has different validity periods. So do check it out, or check with your migration agent or lawyer. The second requirement to be eligible for stream 1 is that you must be living and working in your designated regional area for the last 12 months. Now, if you go to the registration of interest form, which I'll go through later, you'll see for stream 1, they'll also accept candidates who have been living and working in their nominated occupation in a regional area of New South Wales for 3 months. So they will accept those applications. I think that, it's not guaranteed you'll get the invitation. I feel like they should be prioritizing those who've been living and working there for 12 months before they go look at the ones who've been living and working there for 3 months. However, look, it is what it is. So if you do qualify, you can make an application. Now, this one is pretty straightforward. I know later I'm going to talk about work experience requirements for the other streams, as well as, whether they're inviting offshore. Stream 1 is purely for people onshore. And if you look closely, there is no requirement for the work experience. And once I explain the stream 2 and 3 later, you'll understand what I mean about the work experience requirement. So if you have a look at the occupation list, there is a fair few occupations that are available. For example, I have seen registered nurse, community worker, as well as accountant. So if you are eligible under stream 1, as I mentioned before, and your occupation's on the list, you can go ahead and register your interest on the website for stream 1. Now, obviously remember that you had to have submitted an expression of interest as well. Now, there is something that I did pick up recently, but I'll explain it right at the end about the expression of interest. It's actually really interesting. The RDAs all assess these things differently, and I've seen some refusals, and I'll talk about common reasons for refusals afterwards. Second of all, let's talk about stream 2. Now, to be eligible under stream 2, obviously you need to have a valid skills assessment on the eligible occupation list for your stream. So it's a different occupation list for stream 2 and 3. but obviously I'll leave the link below for you guys to have a close look. It's different to the one for Stream 1, and the key criteria to be eligible for Stream 2 is that you recently completed your studies in a regional institution in regional New South Wales. You must have completed that study in the last 24 months, and you must be eligible to claim your regional study points for that. So what that means is you completed your 2 years of study in regional New South Wales, and also you lived in regional New South Wales during that time. I had some people who asked me, I think they studied at University of Wollongong, but they lived in Sydney during that 2 years. That means they're not eligible. To be eligible, you had to have studied in Wollongong, as well as basically lived in Wollongong. And then next, if you have an occupation on the occupation list, you'll be eligible to apply. I'll go through the requirements when I explain Stream 3 as well, because they're quite similar in terms of the occupation. So to be eligible for Stream 3, you must hold an eligible skills assessment, a valid skills assessment for your occupation, which is on that occupation list. So same as what I explained before. However, Stream 2 and 3 have a combined occupation list for the RDAs. And so this gets really confusing, but let's just stick to what's on the New South Wales website firstly, and then we look at the RDA website. Okay, so if I'm looking at the occupation list for Stream 2 and 3 on the New South Wales website, let's for example have a look at the occupation registered nurse brackets surgical. If you have a look at it, you see 2 ticks next to it. What that means is, first of all, they're accepting offshore applications, which is great. Second of all, if you're going to apply in Far South Coast as a registered nurse with a surgical skills assessment, you need to have 3 years work experience, because it's got another tick next to it if you look in the columns. But if you just look at that, it's not enough. You also need to go to the Far South Coast RDA website and just check to see if the occupation is actually available, which is actually so much work because it does get confusing. You know, you got to go to the right RDA, you got to check on the website again, then you got to check the requirements. So you must have 3 years work experience. I'll explain later also how that work experience is calculated. Again, if I look at Far South Coast and I look at the occupation chef, if I look at the first column, there's no tick. So they're not accepting offshore applications for chefs. If I look at the second column, there's another tick, which means that if you're a chef and you want to apply in Far South Coast under Stream 2 or 3, you must have 3 years post-qualification work experience. But once you've established that, you then also need to go to the Far South Coast RDA website again and just double check that they're accepting applications for chefs. And look, this does change probably quite frequently. So even if you've checked 2 days beforehand and you go to apply, in 2 days time, you need to double check everything again because it does chop and change a little bit. And look, I know people are getting frustrated with this, but this probably goes hand in hand with, supply and demand. So to be fair, there's probably a lot of applications in the system. Next, if I have a look at Riverina and I'm looking at the occupational therapist, if I have a skills assessment, I look on the columns. First of all, there's no tick there for offshore. So they're not accepting offshore applications for that. Look at the second column. There is also no tick there, which means I don't need to have 3 years work experience before I apply. And then once you've established that, head over to the Riverina website and just double check all of that again, okay? So that's my, kind of key tips before you apply for this. But please, it gets really complicated, and plus the RDAs are actually really strict. I've actually seen a lot of people come to me with the applications being declined, and the repercussions of that are actually pretty bad because you get a 12-month ban or something like that, and I'll explain that in a minute. So look, it's just not worth it. I think if you're comfortable with it, do get your proper advice from a migration lawyer or an agent so that you do this properly, because whatever it is, it's not worth a 12-month ban. So obviously, if you've completed your expression of interest on Skill Select and that's all done and finalized and correct, you can go ahead and lodge your registration of interest, which is quite a simple form, to be honest. It's just all the checking and everything you need to make sure is correct before you submit it. So let's have a look at the common reasons why these RDA applications and 491 applications are actually refused. The other day I received a couple of queries from clients. They had their 491 applications rejected from the RDAs. And I had a look at the reasons, and one of them was like, you updated your EOI after you submitted your ROI, so therefore your information is consistent. Now, it's actually really strange because, I was always of the opinion that you can do this. We didn't do that for any of our clients, but if we did, we could have gotten a refusal, which is crazy. So before you finalize your EOI, make sure it's all correct, because once you submitted the ROI, you don't want to change it too much because they may not accept it. But I do think that's strange, because what if your details do change during that time? Because their selection, their invitation doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't get processed in one day. It gets processed in more like, 4 weeks. And so if I just have to change my address, my postcode, my job, because that's just life, I don't think that's exactly fair. And this isn't the case with all RDAs, because to be honest, I've actually, changed those details because halfway through the invitation process, the client, got a new job and she had to move it to a new postcode. So, we did change it. But in seeing that now, we ain't touching any EOIs until after the process is finished. Or if we wanted to, we'd probably just tell the RDA first before we go and change anything. The second reason why these applications could be refused is that the points were claimed incorrectly. So for example, claiming the 5 points for regional study, you may have ticked yes because you studied at Wollongong, but if you lived in Sydney during that time, then you aren't actually eligible to claim those points. So that's an example of how, you've incorrectly claimed the points and then also, couldn't have gotten a refusal. The other one I see quite common is people claiming work experience incorrectly. So I had a couple of nurses who lodged their EOIs and they claimed work experience for their work experience prior to finishing as a personal care worker. They ticked yes. And it's not relevant. It's completely different. The job duties are completely different and everything's different. So I've seen that happen. So just be very careful before you claim all the points and make sure that you do fully understand and the EOI expression of interest process. The second reason is that you must have genuinely met the residency requirements. So if you are onshore and you're claiming, for example, stream 1 or something like that, you got to make sure that you actually did truthfully live there and work there for the last 3 or 12 months according to the criteria. You must have also been employed for at least 20 hours per week. So if you had 3 months of work experience and 4 weeks was at 10 hours per week, then you don't qualify. And if you're applying as an offshore applicant, you must have been overseas for the last 3 months at least. Now, the next one is overclaim points for employment. So it gets really tricky because how some of the occupations have a work experience requirement. So for example, if I have a skills assessment from VetAssess and I'm trying to claim work experience, you need to actually look on the VetAssess document. And if you have a date deemed skilled there, you can only count the work experience after the date deemed skilled. It would also come up probably for Australian Computer Society skills assessments. So there should be a date deemed skilled there. So it's really important that you do check that and only count the work experience after that. Now, for any reason, if there is a refusal or if anything happens or, there's false documentation or, something doesn't quite add up, you can get a ban for 12 months from applying in New South Wales, which is huge because 12 months is a very long time and you definitely have to, move to another state. And obviously there's so many repercussions with that. So it's so important that you don't rush this application and that you make sure that it is applied correctly. I've seen so many people, kind of rush it, submit it, and, they got the 12-month ban. So, even with our team, we are just double checking, triple checking everything because at this point, it is just too critical. It's people's lives essentially. So we are taking the extra time to do it. I don't think 1 or 2 days is going to make a difference. There's absolutely no need to just rush it without getting everything, clear in your head. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you did like that video, found it helpful, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments below. Now, as you guys know, I'm all over social media. I have Instagram, I have TikTok, I've left the links below. And look, if you are looking for a migration lawyer or agent, I have a team and we're currently working on their profiles for our website, but we have quite a large team. And if you ever need assistance, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll leave our contact details here for you. But thank you so much and I'll see you guys in the next video.